The clinking of silverware against porcelain filled the silence of the dinner table. For the first time in years, I was sitting across from my son Daniel and his wife Claire. The meal looked like something out of a magazine: roast chicken, glistening with herbs, crystal glasses catching the chandelier light, but the atmosphere felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. I had missed too many dinners like this, too many birthdays, holidays, and moments that could have healed the distance between us. Daniel smiled politely as he cut into his meal, but there was something forced behind his eyes. Claire, always poised, asked about my health, my business, my plans for retirement. Her questions were sharp, like she was checking off a list rather than making conversation. I tried to ignore it. I wanted to believe this was a new beginning, a chance to fix the broken pieces of our family. Then, in the middle of a bite of roasted potato, my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. I reached for it absent-mindedly, expecting a work notification or a reminder from my calendar. But when I unlocked the screen, my heart nearly stopped. A text message from an unknown number. It said, "Get up. Leave now. Don't tell your son anything." I froze. My fork hovered midair, and for a second I thought I had misread it, but the words were there, glowing on the screen, urgent and commanding. My throat went dry. I glanced up at Daniel and Claire. They were chatting casually about the new neighborhood, about how expensive property had become. Neither of them looked suspicious. Neither of them gave any sign they knew about the message. Still, a cold shiver crawled down my spine. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and forced myself to chew, to swallow, to look normal. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the glass of wine to my lips. Who had sent that message, and why did it feel less like advice and more like a warning? Memories flooded back. The last time Daniel and I had spoken before this dinner, it had ended in shouting. He wanted money again. An investment opportunity, he'd called it. I refused, tired of watching him burn through every dollar like it was nothing. That night he swore he didn't need me, that he would build his own empire without my help. Now, months later, here I was, invited back into his life with open arms and a perfect dinner. And just when I started to believe things were changing, an unknown voice was telling me to run. I pushed my chair back slightly, pretending to adjust my jacket. My eyes flicked toward the hallway that led to the front door. "Dad, are you all right?" Daniel asked, his tone casual but his gaze sharp. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a bit of indigestion. This food is rich." Claire chuckled softly, though it sounded rehearsed. "It's nothing water can't fix. I'll bring you a glass." She stood quickly, almost too quickly, disappearing into the kitchen. The moment she was gone, I pulled my phone back out and read the message again. "Get up. Leave now. Don't tell your son anything." My pulse pounded in my ears. Whoever sent that message knew exactly where I was, and they wanted me out immediately. I glanced toward the kitchen door where Claire had vanished, then at Daniel, who watched me with an intensity that felt unnatural. The chandelier light flickered once, as if the house itself was holding its breath. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. If I stayed 1 minute longer, I might not make it out alive. I pushed my chair back an inch, enough to make it look like I was adjusting for comfort, not planning an escape. The unknown text pulsed in my pocket like a heartbeat. "Bathroom?" I asked lightly, as if small talk could drown out the alarm bells in my skull. "Second door on the left," Daniel said, too quickly. Claire returned with a glass of water, set it exactly where my hand would fall, and flashed a polished smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Take your time," she purred. "We'll wait." I rose, nodding, and walked toward the hall. 2 steps past the dining room threshold, my phone vibrated again. Another message from the same unknown number. "Not the bathroom. Keep walking. Pantry door. Service corridor. Do not drink anything." The air thinned in my lungs. I slipped past the powder room and reached a tall white door with a brass knob in the pantry. My fingers hesitated, then turned it. Inside, shelves of labeled jars, a whisper of cold air, and a second door at the back. I eased it open into a narrow service corridor lined with hooks and a side exit to the garden. Footsteps, voices. Daniel's lowered, urgent. He's jumpy. Just get him to sign after dessert. Claire, whisper sharp. He'll sign. The document is ready. Keep him talking. My scalp prickled. I stepped into the garden and let the door click softly behind me. Night air cooled the sweat on my neck. I crouched behind a hedge, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my gums. The phone buzzed again. Call me. I dialed. A woman answered, calm, controlled, disguising her voice. Don't go far. You're safe outside for now, but listen carefully. Who are you? I whispered. Why are you helping me? I work in the house, she said after a beat, and I have eyes. A rustle like she'd turned to check a doorway. They're not reconciling with you. They prepared a durable power of attorney and transfer agreements. Tonight was about your signature. My mouth went dry. What about the water? The wine? Don't touch either. The brown bottle behind the bar looked like bitters, contains a sedative blend. It makes people compliant, slows memory formation. A lawyer could argue you signed while lucid. A cold, clean anger cut through the fog. Where are the papers? Study. First door past the foyer. Bottom left drawer. Photos are your insurance. I slipped back through the service corridor and paused, breathing with the metronome of the grandfather clock. The foyer spread out white marble, a table with a floral arrangement, the study door half closed like a conspirator. I pushed it with my knuckles. Inside, leather chairs, a mahogany desk, the faint, expensive smell of polish. I knelt, opened the bottom left drawer, and stared. A folder labeled in neat black letters, Durable Power of Attorney Daniel M. Harris. Beneath it, Transfer of Membership Interests Harris Hospitality Group, LLC. My company's name, my life typed cleanly on paper I hadn't touched. Yellow flags marked signature lines with patient little arrows. Sign here. Click. I took photos, front, back, every page. My hands steadied with each shutter sound. When I reached the last sheet, a post-it stared back. Have him initial all pages. Film for memory. Claire. Film. My stomach flipped. They intended to record me docilely agreeing to everything manufactured consent. Outside the study, a floorboard creaked. I slid the drawer closed and melted into the shadow beside a bookcase just as Daniel's silhouette crossed the doorway. He hovered a heartbeat, scanning the desk, then moved on. My phone hummed in my palm. Bar cart, top drawer. You need proof. I edged to the liquor cabinet and opened the narrow drawer. There it was, a small bottle with a dropper, dark glass, a craft label that would pass for bitters to anyone not looking twice. Inked underneath, in Claire's precise handwriting, 3-4 drops per pour. I took a photo, then another with the label peeled back just enough to reveal a pharmacy sticker beneath, an off-brand sedative compound name I recognized from the worst news stories. Footsteps again, closer, sharper. Claire's voice, silk over steel. He's been gone too long. I closed the drawer, slipped back into the hallway, and reached the dining room threshold just as they reappeared from the opposite side, polished and smiling, like nothing in the world was wrong. There you are, Claire said, relief acting as warmth. We thought you got lost. Old house, I said lightly. Plenty of doors. Daniel lifted the decanter. One last toast before dessert. His hand hovered steady, rehearsed. My phone vibrated in my pocket. One final message before the next move. They called someone. A car will arrive in 10 minutes. If you're still inside when it does, you won't walk out. I raised my empty glass, met my son's eyes, and smiled like a man who hadn't just seen his future dismantled on cream stationery. In that case, I said, voice even, let's make this quick. The doorbell rang. Once, twice. A low, heavy knock followed nothing like a neighbor's. The heavy knock rattled through the house like a warning shot. Daniel's hand froze mid-pour, amber liquid trembling in the crystal decanter. Claire's eyes darted toward the foyer, then back to me, her smile twitching at the edges. Expecting someone? I asked casually, though my heart pounded like a drum. Daniel forced a laugh. Probably the neighbors. They're always dropping by. But neighbors didn't knock, like that measured, deliberate, as if testing the weight of the door. The sound carried authority. Claire slipped quickly into hostess mode. I'll get it. Her heels clicked down the marble hallway, echoing too loudly against the silence that pressed in around us. I shifted in my chair, hand brushing my phone in my pocket. A new buzz. Another message. Stay calm. Do not drink. Watch their faces. The visitors are not friends. Claire's voice floated back from the foyer. Light, rehearsed. Good evening. Can I help you? A deeper voice answered, male, confident, muffled words, but one slipped through. Delivery. Delivery. At 9:30 at night, in Montclair, to a gated mansion, my stomach turned. Claire reappeared, her posture tight, though her face stretched into a smile. False alarm. Just a package. She set a small cardboard box on the buffet sideboard with exaggerated nonchalance. Daniel picked up the decanter again, pouring smoothly, as if nothing had happened. Let's not ruin the evening. To family, Dad. To second chances. He slid the glass toward me. The whiskey shimmered. Golden. Treacherous. My phone buzzed again. That box isn't delivery. It's leverage. You have less time than you think. I wrapped my hand around the glass, lifted it, and swirled the liquid. To Margaret, I said quietly, invoking my late wife's name. Their eyes flickered just for a moment, but it was enough. A tightening around Claire's jaw, a twitch in Daniel's cheek. I set the glass down untouched. Tell me, son, I said, my voice steady. How does a man who begged me for investment money last year suddenly afford a house like this? Daniel's smile faltered. Real estate, Dad. You know, buy low, sell high. Claire leaned in smoothly. Daniel is being modest. He's worked very hard. Success comes when you seize opportunity. The words were too polished, too practiced, a script. I reached for my phone under the table, pretending to adjust my napkin. Another vibration. Exit soon. Take nothing. They'll notice if you stall too long. But my chance to move slipped away as Maria, the housekeeper, entered quietly with a tray of dessert small cakes on porcelain plates. She placed one in front of each of us, hands trembling slightly as her eyes flicked toward mine. Her look was brief, but it carried urgency, warning. Claire lifted her fork first, radiant again. Please, Jonathan. Try this. It's a family recipe. Family recipe. The phrase landed like a stone in my gut. I glanced at Maria. She kept her eyes down, but the slightest shake of her head told me everything I needed. I placed my fork neatly beside the plate. It looks wonderful, I said warmly. But I'm too full. Can't waste good food on a stomach that's already stretched. Daniel forced a laugh that rang hollow. You're always so cautious. My phone buzzed again. Car outside, still waiting. Black sedan. 2 men. Don't let 'em box you in. The pressure in the room thickened, every second stretching like wire ready to snap. I could feel Daniel watching me, searching for signs of weakness, while Claire tried to drown the tension with chatter about business and property values. My hands stayed steady on the table, but inside my thoughts sharpened. I had proof on my phone, a mysterious ally inside the house, and only minutes before whatever plan lurked outside came crashing through the door. I smiled calmly, leaned back in my chair, and said the one thing guaranteed to shake them. Daniel, why don't you tell me about the documents in your study? The fork slipped from Claire's hand, clattering against porcelain like a gunshot. The clatter of Claire's fork rang through the dining room like a warning bell. For the first time that evening, her mask cracked. She bent quickly to retrieve it, but her flushed cheeks betrayed her panic. Daniel's voice followed a second too late, forced and brittle. Documents? What are you talking about, Dad? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the polished mahogany. The folder in your study. Power of attorney. Transfer of assets. Sign here, Initial there. Very professional. Daniel's face drained of color. Claire recovered faster, forcing a laugh that sounded like broken glass. Jonathan, you must have misunderstood. Business papers can look intimidating. I'm sure it's nothing. Nothing? I echoed softly. Strange, then, that they had my company's name typed across every page. Even stranger, that your instructions were written in Claire's handwriting, 3 to 4 drops per pour. Claire froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Daniel shot her a look sharp enough to cut. You went through my office, he hissed. His polished composure slipped, replaced by something raw, dangerous. That was private. I met his eyes, unblinking. So was my trust. Yet, here we are. The room fell silent, heavy with tension. Even the chandelier seemed to hum louder. Maria appeared at the doorway, carrying a tray of coffee. Her eyes flicked between us, then settled briefly on me. A silent question. Do you need help? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. 3 hard knocks, slower this time, not delivery summons. Daniel stiffened, glanced at his watch, then forced another smile. Don't worry, Dad. Just business associates. Nothing for you to be concerned about. I stood before he could stop me. I'd like some fresh air. This room is stifling. Claire moved quickly, blocking my path with a smile too tight. Jonathan, please. At least finish your dessert. The knock came again louder. A man's voice carried faintly from the foyer. Daniel, open up. The smile fell from his face. His jaw clenched. For a moment, his mask dropped completely, and I saw the desperation bleeding through. Sit down, he ordered, voice low and trembling. I didn't move. Or what, son? You'll poison me? Trick me into signing away everything Margaret and I built? His hands curled into fists on the table. You don't understand. You never have. Do you know what happens when you owe men like them? They don't wait. They don't forgive. Claire's voice cracked as she tried to soothe him. Daniel, stop. He doesn't need to know. But the truth was already spilling out, thick and bitter. You think I wanted this? He snapped at me. You think I dreamed of drugging my own father? They gave me a deadline, Dad. 11 days. I'm already late. If I don't pay, they'll... He broke off as another knock thundered through the house. The front door handle rattled. Maria set down the tray with trembling hands. Señor Jonathan, she whispered. The back door now. But I stayed rooted, eyes locked on my son. So you betray me to save yourself? His eyes glistened, desperate. I had no choice. There's always a choice, I said coldly. The front door burst open. Heavy boots struck marble. 2 men in dark coats stepped inside, their silhouettes stretching across the foyer. Daniel, one barked, his voice gravel rough. Time's up. Claire gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth. Daniel rose unsteadily, face pale, sweat beading at his temples. I stood too, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My phone buzzed one last time in my pocket. A single stark message glowed on the screen. Police en route. Stall them. I slid the phone back into my pocket and straightened my jacket. For the first time all evening, I felt steady, ready. Because now, the real game had begun. The intruders filled the foyer like shadows with voices. Broad shoulders, heavy boots, and eyes sharp as blades. One carried a leather folder under his arm. The other flexed gloved hands like he was itching to use them. Daniel stumbled forward, arms out, voice cracking. Please, just a little more time. I'll have the money, I swear. The taller man sneered. You've been saying that for weeks. Tonight, you pay or you bleed. Claire shrank against the wall, clutching her silk dress as if fabric could shield her. Her eyes darted to me, pleading silently, but there was no innocence left in her mask. I rose slowly from my chair, letting the scrape of wood against marble slice through the tension. You're in my house, I said firmly. The shorter man barked a laugh. Your house? Old man, this isn't yours anymore. But his confidence faltered when I stepped into the chandelier light. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't broken. I was calm. Because I wasn't alone. Blue and red lights strobed faintly against the window panes, unnoticed by Daniel, who was too busy begging. "Dad, please," he whispered hoarsely, finally turning back to me. His eyes were wide, frantic, the same eyes that once begged me to read him another bedtime story. "You have to help me. Just sign the papers. Transfer everything. Save me." I stared at him, and in that moment, I saw the boy he'd been and the man he'd become. Greed had eaten him hollow. "You tried to poison me," I said quietly. "You tried to erase everything your mother and I built. And now you ask me to save you?" His mouth opened, but before he could answer, the front door burst wider. Police surged in, weapons drawn, voices cutting like thunder. "Police, hands where we can see them." Chaos detonated. The loan sharks spun, hands halfway to their coats. Officers swarmed, tackling them to the ground, metal clashing against marble. Claire screamed. Daniel froze, his face blanching as handcuffs snapped around the intruder's wrists. Maria appeared at the dining room threshold, her apron trembling in her fists, eyes glistening with both fear and relief. The taller officer approached me first. "Mr. Harris, you're safe now. We received your call." Safe. The word struck deep, almost foreign after the night's spiral. But Daniel wasn't done. His voice cracked like broken glass. "You set me up," he howled. "You called them on me." I turned to face him, my expression carved from stone. "No, son. You set yourself up the moment you chose betrayal over honesty." Officers seized him next, reading his rights, as his protests dissolved into sobs. Claire tried to argue, pleading that she was coerced, but Maria stepped forward, voice trembling yet resolute. "She planned everything," she said. "I heard them. She told him what to put in the drinks. She wrote the notes on the papers." Claire's composure shattered. Her perfect hair, her flawless mask, it all fell as the cuffs locked around her wrists. The house grew still again, except for the police radio's crackling and clipped bursts. The two strangers were dragged out first, then Claire, then finally Daniel, my son, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. He didn't look back at me. When silence returned, Maria and I stood alone in the wreckage of a meal that was never meant to be eaten. She whispered, "I'm so sorry, Senor Jonathan." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't be. You saved me." Outside, the night air was cool, almost cleansing. Blue and red lights bathed the mansion's stone walls like judgment come alive. I lifted my eyes to the sky, whispering to the memory of Margaret. I kept us safe, even from him. And for the first time in years, I felt her smile in the quiet. Because justice, though painful, had finally come home.